Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Vincent Kevin and I do stuff, and this is
Alejandro Piers Ortega and I also do stuff, and this is
episode 1 of the Deep Sea Podcast. Hey, starting a podcast, no one does that these days. So, yeah.
Well, for episode 1 we have a guest
we
want to invite onto
Yes.
the podcast because of the role that he's played in our film journey in our lives.
Yeah, we were thinking about who we want. We want to try and have a guest every time, because this podcast is an excuse for us to not only meet people that we're really interested in, but also bring people from our documentary films that we're creating and releasing on this channel, on our YouTube channel, to then allow them a longer form platform to speak, and also to allow you guys who are interested in the films to go, oh, actually, I want to listen to this person who was in this 10-minute film, and now I get to listen to them for like an hour and delve a bit deeper. And also we get to ask them all the stuff that we didn't get to ask them when we made a film with them. And so Tom Guthrie, we made a film with it feels like a long time ago. I don't know if it was that long ago. What, 2 years ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I think. Yeah.
We made a few. We made about 3, and we're going to make another one with him this year. So, yeah, we thought we'll get him on and have a chat.
And to give a little bit of context, he is, a director, actor, composer, who has performed at the Royal Opera House. He has sung on BBC Radio, and I guess most importantly for us, he has formed the charity Music and Theatre for All, which is a community-based arts charity, in which we met him in that role. So welcome on, Tom.
Tom Guthrie.
I'm Tom. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who don't know Tom, I had a quick scour around on the internet prior to.
Yeah, very unwise.
It was unwise. You've got some filthy shit there, Tom. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But it starts at a certain part, but it doesn't have where. I mean, I feel like you're much more adept at telling us a bit of your story through music, and I just thought I would add what was lacking at the beginning of it, where I feel like for the true origin story of Tom, it starts somewhere along a particularly beautiful choral evensong held at the Church of St Mary the Great summoned Tom forth from the roots of the ground up into a cavity within the organ of the great cathedral, and there he took nourishment on music until he came of age. And then you can continue there.
Thank you, Alex. That's a very poetic introduction.
I think
what was the church? St Mary's?
Well, it's in Cambridge. I thought you might know it because eventually you studied at Cambridge, did you not?
I did, and I was a choir boy there, but not St Mary's.
Yeah,
did you just make that up?
No, it really is. It really is what I kind of. There are a few, and I was like, this one sounds like it might be the one. Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
Yes, I did come from that background, but actually the choir I sang in as a boy. Which was, I mean, it used to take tours, make recordings, it was on the radio a lot, it was kind of but it was particularly well known for being about the sound and the text and about a kind of physical meaning thing. They used to call it continental sound, which some people sort of thought meant just quite unpleasant to listen to. But it meant that we were just really taught to really mean it and really sing, and there was a kind of big emphasis on musicality of really phrasing the words really and the sound's amazing. I mean, you listen to recordings from that time, they are amazing, and I do think that did influence me. I don't know about it sucked me into the belly of the cathedral and then launched me into the world, but it was kind of a unique sort of setup, and not unique, there was one or two other choirs that were like that, and actually I think the best kind of singing is that is meaning it, and then the body responds, and you've got a need to communicate. It's very basic, primal, babies crying sort of activity. So,
Was that the spark in your eye? Is there this sort of like heroic origins moment where you were going down one path and you were to become maybe some a football player or a software engineer or something that was vaguely, and then you sung into this choir and it was life transformed? Or
Well, I was about 7.5 when I was there. So I think it was the light in my parents' eyes that I come from Polish Jewish immigrant background, and so for my mum in particular, that was my mum's side. It was a bit of a ticket to music scholarships. A sort of the education was really, really amazing. It was a sort of privileged education, but you had to get into the choir to get it, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't because you had money; it's because you housed your kid and forced them into auditioning for this thing, and involved boarding. So I was away from home, and that's been a big thing to unpick in my life. But actually, it was quite, for me, it was quite an interesting thing about how one then discovered. I think anybody's been through that experience, and there are plenty of people around in this country. It's kind of one of the traditions of this country that people sent away to be in a choir and often bored. But I think that what danger is that you don't know quite what you end up extremely skilled. I was sight reading the age of 10, live on the radio, sitting under pressure situations, traveling, turning up to world famous venues and having to deliver singing solos and none of it you chose, but you end up being really good at it. It's really fun, don't get me wrong, it's not like it wasn't all pain and suffering. So you end up, and then so you end up with this skill which can take you forward quite a long way in life, because people will pay you to turn up and sing sessions, or to, there's a career for you there waiting for you. But when I was about 15, 16, 17, I really got into the theatrical bug, and I think that I really thought that's what I would have done if I hadn't done this. This is what I would be really interested in doing. But when I was at university, I really enjoyed. I do love music, and I absolutely, I was fascinated by singing. I was fascinated by the voice, fascinated by my own sort of like journey with the voice and my own, and particularly just loved the music. And I loved certain ways of performing it. I loved some things so much more than others. I think it's the same with everyone, right? It's like. But there was, it was classical background. There's some singers that I just had love and tenderness and phrase, really, really good phrasing. That's kind of sounds like a rather niche thing, but it's just like people go, I want to sing the whole time. I'm going to sing like this. So boring, like I want to sing the whole time. It's the kind of how you use the language and how your body gets involved. And so I was fascinated by that. But then about 10 years later, I was early 30s, or 12, 15, 13, 14, 15 years later, I got into directing because I was fascinated. Just sort of following that path.
What kind of directing was it? Because it's changed quite a bit since when you first got into it, And
you mean for me?
Yes, for you. Yeah. What you first started directing, because obviously where you ended up going with it, but what was it at the beginning of when you were directing?
I was working as a singer. I'd been trained as a singer, so I went back to Cambridge and did a degree and sang. I was really interested in that and played the violin a lot. I was kind of like in the music scene there, just doing a lot of stuff. And then I came to London and got a job, started trying to survive and was doing some singing, earning some money singing. But then I thought, if I'm going to do this and I really love theatre, I really want to do opera, I really want to kind of explore what I can do. So I went to Manchester to study postgrad. And there we had this really brutal teacher who was fantastic. He was just quite old school. She used to kind of sit there in the corner. She was an influential person for a lot of people, but she sit in the corner being quite abusive. But you're underestimating the amount you need to project, and she'd stop you every time you sort of tell her, and you'd start to use your hands or to just go your own way a bit with the thing, and she'd stop you, and it was like
it's like a whiplash situation.
Yeah, it was a bit a whiplash. Yeah. And it was, the good thing about her, she wasn't, I don't think she was quite as abusive as that. That was pretty serious, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But no, she was, it was just about discipline, it's just about control, it's about learning that it's not about you. It's about the audience. It's about and actually the freedom that you kind of want when you perform. The goal, which is kind of spontaneity and comes through real discipline. And I mean that's a fascinating thing. The balance between structure and freedom. And if structure is there to fix you down, it's toxic. But if structure's there to give you freedom, I mean, there's so many examples. Like football's a good example. Like sport, if the team knows everybody knows its role within the thing, and the structure is malleable, but it's there, then the ball is free. The ball is like, you can do amazing things as a team. But if everyone's running after the ball and no one's holding the structure of the thing, then the ball will get sort of crunched. And it's exactly the same with any sort of technique, isn't it? I mean, filmmaking technique of art, technique of singing, technique of baking bread. These are recipes. They're the structures that allow you to then go, I'm just going to put a bit more salt in, or I'm going to. And I really had that strong experience. I was there for 4 years. I really respected this person, but I came in winging it. Being quite good at acting, quite good at singing, and getting away with it. But then just really understanding. And then I came out into the profession, and most people had no idea about that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Which is fair enough, and it was quite. Again, I felt very fortunate to have it, but I started to get quite frustrated with directors, and I was really interested in what makes things good, and how do you move people? What's the science behind it in a way? So I wrote to the company I was working with and said, can I do some directing? And I thought they'd say, sorry, we've got our own directors. Who the hell do you think you are? But they're very supportive, and I did some singing and directing at the same time, and then did a couple of shows and really enjoyed it, and then had to keep working and didn't go for it. And then I was working for a company and they needed someone, and that's where it started. And yeah. But it's good for me. I mean, I just really enjoy thinking about that stuff, and I really enjoy the work, and I really enjoy the creativity of it, and it does keep changing, and I'm so much more interested in making new stuff now than the whole opera, whole classical music thing is it's so hierarchical, and it's so rooted in tradition, performance tradition. That people are very undaring about what they really like. It's like you only like things that you're allowed to like, and actually recreating the same thing that was written 200-300 years ago. I think there's great value in it, but there's also so much misunderstanding about the kind of freedom that was expected, and and the ownership that was expected, and we choir boy, there was God, and then there was the composer, and then there was the conductor, and you at the bottom of the pile doing what you're told, doing your best. Was it good enough? And actually, I think it's so unenriching, and actually so uninteresting in a way, because we need stories now, we need expression now, we need people to. I think that's that mix of that feeling, and I really got that from my time at the Opera House, and the sort of outreach programs that they did were amazing, coupled with the discipline about audience and discipline about craft and discipline about structure. That's what I love, putting those things together.
Yeah, I was going to say that in other terms that because that was the transformation in your journey that I was wondering about as you talk about the sort of the classical approach to certain things. And I maybe one way of putting it is that sort of building a monument to the great men of the past rather than really trying to affect the people listening today. And I was wondering how it is that you kind of came to that transformation, whether in your directing, but in I guess where you want to put your attention and energy, because we'll get into that in a little bit, but that energy has directly influenced us through how we've worked together and how we've approached things. So I'm fascinated. So cool. In a sense, I'm trying to find it one iteration back. I'm like, I can tell you how we found it and how you've influenced that, but where did you find out that?
Yeah, well, that's cool. I'm really good to hear that kind of synergy about stuff. I mean, I think it feels like I should. There's some brilliant classical artists, amazing classical artists who really reach people and really touch people, and there's something about the quality and the dedication it takes to be a master of that world, and at the same time a soulful performer who reaches people. I have so much respect for it, and they're really wonderful, creative people in that. So I think you've got to be a bit careful about sort of tarring it all with the same brush, but But there's this thing. I mean, it's interesting staging a production of a 19th century opera, let's say, where everybody is working from this score, which has been written down, and there are certain rules about how you're going to perform it, certain rules about what kind of singer can sing this part. You know, I don't know, the Fach system, it's what type of voice are you? Are you a lyric soprano or a lyric coloratura or a dramatic lyric? What are you? And these are all, you know, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that role. You can't do that. And it's interesting because, of course, there's some truth in it, because you actually can't get through. It's a professional situation. You can't get through the whole show, and then the next night maybe you have to do another show. Sometimes there's more of a gap, but, you know, it matters. These things matter in terms of the result, and that's really important. But the only person in the room who's being really creative at that moment, rather than recreating something, is the director, is the person who's staging, who's actually putting it on in a completely new way. But that was never. It never felt like that. It felt that the god that was being worshipped in the room was the composer, and I get that that's the reason it's being done. You know, there's fantastic music, but at the same time there was this kind of disjunct about that. And it's not that I felt, oh, hang on, we should be getting a bit more credibility here. It was more that I was thinking, well, what is storytelling? What are people coming for? And what kind of spaces are they coming into to experience this? And of course, there are lots of issues about that 19th century approach. It tends to be very patriarchal. Women are put in a certain position often. It tends to be quite racist. I mean, you know, there's some real issues about whether we want those stories anymore. We want the music because it's incredible. And I mean, I say we want the music. We do want the music. We do. And those composers always learnt from composers who went before, often who were dead. It was not like, I don't think it was like it was the pop music of its time. And well, even now, we listen to the Beatles, right? And we're interested. Music's music. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If you like it, if it's good, it's great. And literature's literature. You know, we read Homer. It's 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old, 1,800 years old. It's you know, we are. It's not about being sort of dogmatic about needing to just do new stuff, but it is about making sure that the reason we're doing it is the right reason. Is storytelling. Is community. It's energy exchange between people in a space, and I think that's going to be more and more important, not less important, because we're getting away from that all the time, aren't we? With AI and with these things, we're losing. You know, you know, we get into this. I'm sure you've guys got lots of things to say about this, but the kind of whole trust issue. What am I looking at? Who's done this? Am I just consuming it? And I just want to be excited or moved or revolted or scared. You know, I don't care. I just want that drug. Or is it much, much more interesting, subtle, and human, and about belonging and identity and the art of creating, of one human creating something to affect someone else? That's what you guys do so well. That's why we, you know, that's why we work together, because it's brilliant what you do. But it's the same thing. It's storytelling, isn't it? And that is the ancient art of being around the fireplace and taking someone on a journey, entertaining them, giving them a good time, and we learn all the time about how to do that better and how to do that now. But I think the values are if you get the values skewed, then we're going to dry up, you know.
Sort of the fundamental lessons behind why we do this, right? And they seem so easy and basic, of like, oh, of course, yeah. But it's the simplest things that often get forgotten, right? That kind of thing of like, yeah, why do we tell stories? Why are we actually doing this? And I mean, surely a big reason for that originally, right, was mythology and sort of like passing down information through generations.
Yeah.
But then acknowledging that you can't just do that through data. You could write a shopping list, right? And that would get forgotten. In 100 years, it would get morphed in some way. And so you need to sort of protect against that. But I suppose, yeah, that original idea of it being, you know, including all the aspects, right, of the performance, of the why people are moved by things, right? You want to move them not only to transmit information, but so that they remember it and then they pass it on, and it becomes this cycle of, beauty that gets passed down through generations. And yeah, I think it's really beautiful.
And I feel, just to elaborate a little bit on that journey that we went through, and in a sense, what a big role music and theatre for all, and your work and the amazing team's work, with Gwyneth and with everybody there, had in some sense was, in a very strange way, it was getting to be there and experience that effect on people live as it happens, which was something that is quite unique to film, because it has so many orders of operations where it separates the artist from the art from the audience, in a way that is far more, in that sense, I'm quite jealous of musicians where they literally share the space, and it's like, here, and I can see you and I can do this thing, and my brother's a jazz pianist and he gets to actually jam with the audience, you can feel it, and they can clap and they can do the thing, and even our friend Piers, who's a painter, he can paint, but then he can hang it up in an exhibition and see people there, and there's a little bit more of a, he has to go, what do you think about that? So they come across, but there's still that sort of thing. But when you get into the world of film, it can become so kind of separated that it can become sort of dissociative, where your idea of the audience is this imagined idea, and then you're checking yourself as to thinking, is this really? And then you're going like, wait, who is this going to, and for what reason? And it gets very, very strange and out there, But with documentary film, it gets to kind of reground it right back in the connective tissue of it. And I think that's kind of what, where I feel your energy and I was coming from with what you're doing with the Music and Theatre for All, is bringing that, the connective tissue of art that is able to bring us together through our differences, and seeing people experiencing that, like Apu, like Mike, like all those sort of things, and getting to speak to them, and they go, this is, it's amazing and it's transformational, and I'm scared sometimes, but I'm with other people who are also willing to be vulnerable and doing this thing, and then we're going, wait, we're part of this, like, what is going on? Like, this is so much more than whatever I'd signed up for, and then it goes, well, I think we kind of want to be doing more of this then, and that sort of really helped to reorient our direction within film itself, and so I in that way, I wondered how it has felt for you doing that journey, and how whether that is something you've discovered through Music and Theatre or something you discovered prior, and you go, I'm bringing this in now, and everybody else can share in it too,
That's so cool. That's so good to hear. Thank you for sharing that, and for being part of it, and yourselves being vulnerable and being, and coming into that, I think, and becoming part of the fabric, which is amazing, which is brilliant. And it really showed. I think that the most recent film you did on the stories we tell ourselves, as we were just saying, it's like, felt like a hole in one, and like you sent the edit and I said, this is brilliant, and that was it, signed it off. And I think, and that's the feeling you get from the film. It's completely organic, it's completely natural. It tells the story brilliantly, and so I think, in terms of where I've come to it, it's a very unconscious thing. But going back, I think, to the mythology and the origin of storytelling and the role of storytelling, and you talked about education and passing things on. You talked about beauty, which I thought was beautiful. That there's this. I think it's also just very, very instinctive. It's almost like religion, where everyone says, I'm not, let's say, religious, or I'm not spiritual, or something, and I always struggle with that a bit, because if you're not, you've got to be careful what you're sort of worshipping if you say you're not religious, because we're humans, right? And so there's all sorts of problems with religion. Don't get me wrong, and I don't feel personally affiliated to any particular one, but I think faith, for instance, is such a human need and expression. Let's say, I think storytelling is absolutely one of the most fundamental things, and I think there are storytellers. And I think, that's what they do in all sorts of different ways and different forms, and that's a survival thing. I think it's survival. It's about, so education, you've touched on. Beauty is a wonderful thing, because it's the value of beauty. What is it? It's entertainment as well, a little bit. It's like how it inspires us. then there's also really practical things like identity and bonding, nurturing a sense of belonging, people around the fireside, and also the sense of another, an external thing. Those are really important things for survival. And nowadays, when we sort of global community or not, right? It really doesn't feel like that at the moment, and it almost feels like there's a choice. So either we go, well, hang on, everybody, we have to keep taking the barriers down, not keep putting them up. And it feels like, right, we've sort of chosen the opposite way.
Well, the careful what you worship thing, I think, plays into that.
Yeah, right.
Really, because, I think it's very cool that to see that, because I feel like a lot of, people say I'm not religious or I'm not spiritual. Yeah. And I think I'll maybe put this to you. It's my new favourite definition of religion that is often used in sort of more academic backgrounds, is that religion is the connection or relationship that a person or an individual or a group has to what they consider to be the most important thing in life.
Okay, yeah.
Which then opens it up, right? Because it could be a sports team, or it could be money, or it could be power, or it could be, so many different things.
Yes.
And so exactly, if you're not conscious of what it is that you're worshipping, you will end up worshipping something.
Yes.
And I think, as well, personally, I've been thinking a lot about this, what is my religion?
Yes.
Within the context of this definition.
Yeah.
Which, you don't need to be a part of a sect or a group, an ideology, that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Although they can be the same thing. I think storytelling fundamentally is a pretty good religion to have. If if that is what you feel you were born to do. And as you said, there are storytellers. There are people who, for whatever reason, their whole life have gone, I just want to really just tell stories over and over and over again, and I want to get better at that, and that's what I want to do. And so I do think there's fundamentally a religious and spiritual aspect to it, I think, even though you may not want to use that language, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think there definitely is.
Behind it, a faith in the human spirit. Because as you said, like, worshipping storytelling, I was like, but not like, a spin doctor, a political spin doctor being like, look at all the stories I can weave here to, protect my party and their interests, So it's like behind that with a sort of faith in something deeper about, our connectivity to each other and all that sort of thing, of course, But yeah, and building on that, as you were saying, because you'd said it came up both times through, when you were saying about, not having a religion or a faith and worshipping, and the David Foster Wallace speech that you'd watched recently, which is graduation speech, amazing kind of one, and that there's no such thing as not worshipping, and so it's like, the only sort of advisable thing about worshipping some sort of transcendent values or deity or anything like that is it's the only thing that isn't gonna those things aren't gonna tear you up inside. You worship intelligence and you'll always feel stupid and an imposter. Worship wealth and you'll never feel like you have enough. Worship beauty and you'll always feel ugly. And worship power and you always feel small and feeble and all these sort of things. And so I think that is the the danger of when, as you say, when you go, I don't really have a faith, I don't really have a thing. It goes, well then, do you really know what you're worshipping? Because is that tearing you up inside without you knowing it because you've maybe being deceived by some sort of naive notion that worshipping is naive, that having faith is naive, and trying to remain scientifically, materialistically objective means that I can avoid any of this human nature stuff and I can just remain like a sort of a pure observational instrument of the universe,
uncorruptible.
Like I don't live within a story anymore. And that's the thing is we all live within a story, and depending on how far you want to go down, it's very interesting going into sort of like the neuroscientific kind of stuff of even understanding our sensory inputs as sort of like micro narratives. It's like it's not just an input. There is a sort of like there is, even in the way that you sense the world, because motivation defines perception, there is a story influencing just your primary experience of reality, and so to have it at that level, and then therefore it being kind of healing in some sense of getting people to participate in making the story, and that's, I think, what was so special of us working, on the Urban Opera project was people like actually having authority and a say in the story that they were going to shape, and you realize that, like, you know, it was like, you know, coming across an oasis in a desert for some people. They were like, what is this? Like, I've been told that this isn't really important ever since I left school. You know? And now I'm doing it, and it matters, you know, and we all seem to be okay with it mattering, and no one's going to point and go, you're so stupid thinking that this is, like, why don't you just go, you know, it's like suddenly being vulnerable and being okay with being vulnerable with a group of people again. And you can kind of see that when you do the warm-up exercises or something like that. Like, everyone's got to the point where they can go, like, you know, sort of thing like that. But at first you go, I'm such an idiot. Like, I've been told that this is just stupid to do. Like, what am I doing? Just like waggling around my body and making all these silly noises, you know? And it's like, it's amazing because they do, and they go, okay, but then why does this feel so connecting and good? If it's something so stupid and pointless, why does it feel so connecting and right? You know? And seeing that transformation in people doing it is like, whoa, okay, this is cool. This is amazing.
And more than seeing it, feeling it.
Yeah,
that's what's happening to us. And I think it would be, to add a bit of context as well, that was the urban opera film. Yeah. That was sort of the first, well, it was definitely the first official film that we'd done together, I think. I mean, we had done like stuff.
Documentary.
Yes, right. Yeah.
I mean, we'd done stuff just, you know, we made some.
So that's the start of Deep Sea sort of thing. You mean? Or,
in that sense, as like as
it was,
you know,
kind of
as the documentary part, you know, of it.
Yeah, right.
That was like our first like proper documentary part of it. You know, we had lots of ideas and we filmed our own skits and we did this sort of stuff, and we had stuff from previously that we'd filmed before we'd got together. But that was the first time we were like came together and did a kind of documentary project, and it sort of set the groundwork for how we want to do documentary.
Okay, which is probably partly why we were both like, oh, Tom would be great as episode 1 of the podcast.
It
feels like going back to a bit of the more the fundamentalness of it. So if that's even a word.
Yes.
But so I guess thank you for the space that you offered,
it's my pleasure.
You still do.
Yeah, well, no, it's a pleasure, and you know, yes, likewise, boys. I mean, I think that's just great to meet, you know, like-minded people, and also, you know, I need a good job done. So I'm grateful. You know, it's really important that you to you know. So great, yeah. I mean, it's such a fascinating conversation. There are a couple of things that I just want to pick up on, because the faith is a big one, but also what you're saying about film and the whole idea of synapses and story and what actually it is, kind of connecting one thing to another. It reminded me, and putting the two sort of things together in a way, you know, the beginning of in the Christian church, going back to my roots, sucked up into the cathedral space, is the John's Gospel. The beginning of John's Gospel is, in the beginning was the Word, and I've always found that really problematic, because the Greek, I don't actually know what the Hebrew word, which is the original word, but the Greek word is logos, and that does translate as word. You can translate it like that, but a word is such a reductive thing. It limits the meaning, and actually one of the other meanings of logos is story, and we get logic from it, which is not a word, logic. It's the joining of something to the next thing in a way that makes sense, and that's story. So if you translate it, in the beginning was story, that's so much more interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's that makes sense of religion. In the beginning was the need for a story. In the beginning was the need for, you know, the creation story, for instance, or the story of how we came to be like this, or what our struggle with against addiction, against the things that we feel we need, and then, you know, and selfishness as against being good and being kind and being generous and putting other people maybe and being aware of a balance in society, whatever it might be. Those things which you could say are religious values if you wanted, but they're also sort of common sense, aren't they? Survival things. So in the beginning with story seems to be a much more interesting thing, and I love what you say about that. It's interesting on a personal level, and we're talking also, aren't we, about how you found the path to what you want to do, and that sort of sense of identity, finding a voice. You know, these things are really, and they're going back to the Apu and Mike and them finding a voice, so making their own story and contributing in a way which allows other voices, kind of polyphony of voices, to come together to weave a story where they've got their strands are in it. You know, it's all we were talking about the sort of same sort of things there. But faith. I was taught this recently, or told this recently, that the 4 Fs, which are the kind of things for happiness. You need the 4 Fs.
Oh, okay.
Do you know about this?
No.
First is family, and the next is friends, which is good. That's already half. It's quite cool, isn't it? I like that. And then there's function. So what am I here in the world to do? What's my function? Where do I fit? What's the thing? And the 4th is faith. And it's interesting that they also, this is the thing, I think this is a Harvard thing actually. It's like a sort of psychological research thing that they've done, but it's quite chronological. So you start with family. You know, as a child, you have your family around you, and hopefully that's good and strong and reliable and loving. And then you have friends. You start to go out and and then you have function. So you get in your 20s, you're thinking, what am I going to do? Or you might already know, but you might not find it for a bit. But your journey to find what is it that I'm going to do. And then faith is somehow looking back to say, this made sense. This. There was a reason for this beyond me, beyond maybe in the universe, whatever it might be, that idea of faith, the idea of trusting your voice, trusting your your purpose, and thinking that if I do make decisions right now which are based on what I really, honestly, in an aware way, feel and go on, then it's going to make sense in the end. That I'm going to be able to look back and go, this makes sense because I've been true to something, and it's my story has found itself. And I think that's quite interesting as far as I'm concerned, because I love it hearing that the what we do in the Lucian Creative Chorus has had an influence in it. That there's something about it which is helpful in a way, or thought provoking, and but it's really, for me, in terms there's nothing conscious about that. In terms of what I've been very fortunate to have the background I've had and to be exposed to these opportunities in the case of the Lucian Creative Chorus, literally sort of being taught techniques of group creativity and finding it, realizing for myself that hierarchical, the great composers, God speaking to the composer, they're inspired, they write a symphony down, their conductor gets on and makes people do it really well. That way, you have to be a genius to do music. You have to is really wrong and not, and actually what you can create with people and with voices and with polyphony and an input and energy and exchange, and it is so much richer and so much more interesting, and actually that's what creation is, that nobody ever creates in a vacuum. No one, that's not how it doesn't work like that. If it does, it's probably a bit dead. It probably, I'm not saying that genius doesn't exist, but what is that? It's a kind of being close to the human source, isn't it? And that means being, Bach, Mozart, these people, the classical geniuses, but also the Beatles. Let's go back to the Beatles, and those 800 concerts they did in the Cavern in Liverpool, and when they're touring in Germany and places like really learning their craft before anyone knew about them. The 10,000 hours of work. They didn't just, Lennon and McCartney didn't just sit in a room and go, here's yesterday.
Yeah, I once heard that I think it was Paul or Lennon, they travelled all across Liverpool just to go meet a man who knew a chord that they didn't know.
Yeah, cool.
So they didn't, because obviously there was no internet and all that. It was just we got to take a bus, spend all day, go across to Liverpool, because this guy, he knows F sharp, minor, or whatever.
Yeah,
But I would say what you said about faith was really interesting, because it reminds me of the Alan Watts quote. That faith, belief clings, faith lets go.
Okay, nice.
Seems to be aligning with what you're saying, because it's it is about letting go.
Well,
can any of us here say how we got here? As in this moment, this exact moment, like Tom, how did it? Yeah. How did you get to this moment?
By bike. It was a bit wet. Quite. And you only in retrospect you can kind of like weave something together to answer that, can't you? But it actually doesn't mean anything. It's just that.
Well, no, it's not really satisfying, is it? If you think, okay, I took a bike. Okay, bike over my house. Well, how did I get the house? Okay, well, I did this job. Okay, and then how did I get the job? And you keep going back until, where do you stop? And where do you find that source?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Can we just talk about film, because I'm really interested in that.
Yeah.
In that, what you talked about the live performance versus the film, and the danger. If I understood Alex right, I mean, is that what you said? That because I'm really conscious of that a bit. I'm making a film at the moment myself, and sometimes, for instance, as a director of live performance, you're aware that trying to find this balance between structure and freedom, and really fixing something like in a space, like you're going to move there on this line, you're going to look this direction, you're going to turn your head at this pace, you're kind of creating a scene which you really want to make work, that, or you're just saying to the actors, just go and do it, and I'll there's lots of different ways of doing it, but you're creating something which is going to go on in front of a live performance, which is going to be different every night. So what parameters do you set up and do? There's an Almodovar film, which I'm sure you know, I can't remember the name of it now, and I'm sorry, I'll probably get it wrong anyway, but about a filmmaker who goes off with the leading lady, and they go off for 6 months. I mean, just at the crucial point of the film, they just go off have a romantic time. Do you remember this?
No.
And the studio want to put the film out, and they've disappeared, basically. They've gone, they're going to have a good time. They want to put the film out, so they try and get in touch with them and stuff, but they end up just doing the whole editing process, the whole post-production process without the director.
Right.
And it gets absolutely panned. It's a terrible film. And of course, the thing about for a live director is that's in a sense you can have a fantastic rehearsal process, and then you have a brilliant show. You might open absolutely brilliantly, but at some point you're going to get a series of bad edits because the scene doesn't quite come off because someone wasn't quite like whatever. Then the next scene doesn't come off, and suddenly you get a run of scenes, and suddenly the audience are going, "This isn't very good." And actually, it's to do so in a sense, the film, the chance to choose the edits to make a film where it's going to stay the same forever is incredibly attractive because you can create something that's going to hit every time. You can do that, whereas in live theatre you're playing a different game. You're trying to create the right conditions for there to be hit, so that it can change if there's nobody in, if you've stubbed your toe coming on, whatever it is that might in a live situation be changing the moment, contributing to the change of the moment. They need to react to. They need to be in that live situation. So,
well, I would argue there's an element of that in film.
Yeah, some chance.
The day.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and this is where I think is the importance of, say, I guess if we're talking about fiction, we're talking about a scene that's been set up and there's a crew, and maybe documentary's obviously a little bit different.
Yeah.
But say we're filming a scene or, whatever it is, I think obviously the actor will have multiple takes and you can spend time on it, but there's also this huge machine around it going, okay, come on, we've got it's very stressful, it's time is money, and all this, and so those conditions are not necessarily good, right, for an actor if they, maybe some people are good at blocking that out, but I feel like there is still that element where if your set feels the atmosphere feels homely and warm, and the personalities on it, get along, and there's, I think that's still, quite a large part of it. Yeah. On the day, and I think that's overlooked often in film because often,
there is a live element to it.
There is a live element to it. Of course, you get to try again. It's not like and then there's a million other things like the edit, or the lighting, or whatever it is that will also affect.
Yes.
But as I guess from the performance perspective, as for the actor, there is that element of like, okay, I've got to do it. Yeah. And often they don't get that many rehearsals, sadly.
Yeah, or takes.
So,
like, strangely enough, because it's like almost if you were to take those out to their kind of extremes, and I guess which one you have more faith in, and like the one extreme is almost like you have the theatre space a week in a row and we shoot it scene by scene, and just go, was that a good one? Okay, we'll go on to the next scene. Like no audience, you just shoot it scene by scene, and you have a film of the performance, which was strangely enough never really a real performance, because there was no people there, there was no thing, you just shot it scene by scene. Or you have the, in a strange way, and that's why I guess having more faith in, because I feel this is your approach, which is if you feel it, and if you're there and you're present and you're on the night and you do it with that emotion and that intention, it's having faith that is what will be felt, and And I think when we think of sometimes those like most amazing moments in film or things, and you go, oh, that, and it's surprising how many of those end up being a spontaneous creation, not a planned, sort of moment in that way. Where, in that one, it's kind of going, well, the best we can do is to get everybody in the best place that they can be for that performance, and then have faith that that's going to translate through the camera, in a sense. Because the other one of controlling it, you go, that would be almost, you can plan it out shot by shot and you can do this thing, but what's lost, what's lost with the fact that they are doing it for a camera, and they know that they're just doing the scene, they're not doing the whole performance, there's no audience there, they haven't built themselves up for, the intention behind it is for a capturing, not for an audience to feel, and so it's like, that's going to have a different kind of you may get better framing, of things, but like, do you lose something in intention and in feel, so weirdly enough, on both ends, I'm like, well, I feel you've taught us to have faith in this end, to have faith in the intention and the thing and the performance of it, so I don't know, but obviously there can be in betweens. There might, there can be compromises.
And I think, for me, it's really important that there's the both ends of that scale are valid in a way, and important to combine. I think that the feel and the intention is. You can't. That's absolutely essential. You can't do that at some point in your process of really going there and feeling it, and especially with singing or anything heightened like that. That there's you identify the need to do it. You're not just doing it because you've been told to, or because you're quite good at it, or whatever it might be, to get the real thing. And that's where working with something like the Lewis and Creative Course with people like Apu and Mike, maybe have never sung before in their lives. That's where you can get incredible quality, not through hours of practice and so on, experience and all those things, but through the simple fact that we all, as babies, could cry if our lives were in danger, if we needed feeding, if we needed cleaning, if we needed love and attention, and all life-threatening things. Every single one of us is born to make us a sound that will carry and has got full of communication and can't be shut out. And that's exactly the same vocal technique. Scientific. If you took a shot of these are almost exact words of a scientist we filmed for this film recently. If I took a shot of a baby crying internally in terms of exactly what's going on, and then I put it next to someone singing the Queen of the Night, which you don't know, it's like a famous bit of Mozart opera, very, very high, it's a very famous sort of bit of tune. Exactly the same thing's happening. Physiologically, exactly the same thing's happening. So what's the shortcut to being able to sing something like The Queen of the Night, like a professional opera singer? Well, meaning it. I mean, and realising that you have a need to be heard. So that's, for me, that's a kind of, that's a really important thing that brings in other things. But at the same time, the discipline of saying, but you need to face this direction, and your head needs to move slowly there, because, for instance, in music, there's the bar's that long, the phrase is that long. You can't just one night go, I'm going to do it quicker, because you've got all the musicians. There's a craft to it. There's an understanding. I think the combination of those two is where it's really at. But then that's what you do as well, right? I think if you have the feel and you need the gear, you need to understand how it works. You need the technical. You need to understand where the light's coming from. You need to understand the shot, and that's the combination. I would say the combination of those two things is what it's all about, really.
You reminded me of Citizen Kane.
Did I?
The story behind the director of Citizen Kane. Never made a film before.
Yeah.
And so it was the cinematographer, actually, was veteran, seasoned cinematographer. Yeah. And there's a clip of him online talking about it, and it's so fascinating. He said something like, this kid came to me, wanted to make this film, and I said, okay, in 2 weeks I'll teach you everything you need to know about the game. It's fine. Filmmaking's simple. And he said, and I did that. 2 weeks, I taught him everything he needed to know, and then we made Citizen Kane. One of the best films ever.
Yeah.
So, 100%. And obviously that director really meant what he was doing. And the technicalities of it, you can learn those. And that's actually where sometimes I'll feel insecure in my work is I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. I know all this technical stuff. I know how this works. Even today when we started to sit down, it was like, okay, is this recording the camera, the thing? And now I'm here, I'm like, wait, can I? Oh, okay, now I have to just be present and like mean what I'm saying and listen intently. And,
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, like I
That's
can
why,
do that.
that's why we
right?
balance out. I have the insecurity on the opposite end, where I'm like, being here, being with attention. I'm like, oh god, the technical side of having to. I mean, that's the effect of me studying history at university and you studying film at university.
Yeah.
You know, it's we've just got different senses of imposter syndrome going on here.
At different levels.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Works out well.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
So
Yeah, learning the rule book so you know when to throw it out the window.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Harry
100%.
Potter. Didn't he say Harry Potter? He said practice is important, but so is believing in yourself. And it's quite good, isn't it? Because actually you have to abandon it and go with instinct at some point and say, I'm just going to go in there and be in the situation, be live.
Yeah. Well, you
Not just try and
absolutely have
remember
to.
what I thought. Well, we all know that, right? Everything you prepare, try and remember what you're going to say, never works out.
Yeah.
I feel like you prepare for spontaneity.
That's it.
Or you should.
That's it. That's it. And it's a lot of work. I think that's a lot of work. It's underestimated. To get that freedom in the moment is a lot of craft. And jazz musicians is a good case in point. They practice more than classical musicians. The riffs, the instrument, to really know the instrument, to find the freedom, and then the moment that gives them the possibility to be free in the moment. Not I'll just do what I like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely. And I was going to say, actually, within a wider thing, because we talked about this, your projects possibly in theatre going forward, but maybe to establish a kind of wider context from the work that you've done and that we've been, had the pleasure to be able to be part of, in that way, is how do you feel, the fulfillment of the community art that you've done at, for instance, Music and Theatre for All and the Urban Opera and all that, and what that translates to in terms of that spreading out, into other venues and spaces, possibly around the country, and what that speaks to about, I guess, where we are as a people, what we need, in some sort of sense. It's a bit of a triple-tiered question, I apologise, but...
Yeah. No, I think that's, in a sense it's one, isn't it? I mean, what are we? And it goes back to storytelling, but we definitely at a point where I really believe we've got the opportunity to, or need to rethink the way these things work and to really re-find our values in this. And it's a difficult thing to do because of the world, and everyone's struggling to survive at the moment in a way, and changing things is hard, is scary. But I think it's a no-brainer in terms of the arts, in terms of creativity, in terms of education for children. The culture is suffering so much. There's no money, and councils are having their cultural budgets completely removed. And what happens then? You end up losing generations of people really thinking, as you said earlier, that culture is stupid. It's like it's not serious. It's not proper. It's not for me. It's not. I'm not supposed to. And I mean, it's in the age of AI, as we approach that, we need creative people. Politicians say it. Well, in the future, yes. I remember at the Labour conference, someone was asked, what would you say to an 18-year-old who's studied maths and thought, well, I'll get a job in coding, and now he's faced with AI, and there's absolutely no need for that. There's what we need are people to direct that, and to have the vision, and to have the responsibility, and to think creatively about life. And we haven't brought them up like that. We've been told them that it's not. We have a real job to do now to do that. So I think the way that live performance works now, where the best live performance is maybe the National Theatre. These national companies, they're in London, even if they're in Manchester, or they're a big journey for people to go to. There's the idea that you have to have a centre of excellence and people come. I think that's something we've got to absolutely challenge. I think that the nature of the spaces that these things happen in, Royal Opera, you think about these big front on things where the boxes are slightly facing outward, it's red velvet and gilt and gold, and I'm sorry, but that's colonialism, and that's hierarchy, it's patriarchy. I mean, it's so out of date. It's nothing to do with storytelling. It's to do with power and exhibition. and who's the performer? You know, it's the king's there, and half the audience is kind of looking that way, and you know, we get that patronage and money is incredibly important in what we do, but we have to come up with another model, and we have to come up with another economic model for the world, right? Anyway, but in terms of storytelling, if we put that at the heart, so I think touring, it's interesting with, again, film and live performance at cinemas, that medium for showing a film, every cinema can be extremely different. I mean, barring the multiplexes and so on, but the more soulful ones, the local ones, the picture houses, the everymans, and so on. They're kind of these in different spaces. But your film that you've invested in, your story you've invested in, works in every single cinema in the world. So you're going to reach millions of people. You make a great film. There it's on your dongle. You pop it into the thing and it works. Wasn't like that at the beginning of film. Every projector was different. You made a thing and it worked in one projector right at the beginning, right? Then it became a bit more standardized, and then eventually it became digital, and now it's completely standardized. In theatre and live performance, the reason the National Theatre do not tour around the country with their shows, why not? Why isn't that English National Opera? Why don't they tour around? Because it's so expensive. Why is it so expensive? Because every single theatre is so different that to maintain the quality and to maintain all these things we're talking about, rehearsal, how you create, to maintain the quality and to give people what, the National Theatre's coming, it's going to be amazing. You have to take 2 weeks in each place, or a week, or even if you're very, very good at turning it around really fast, it's just what we need to do is standardise the technical aspects. We need to standardise the lighting, standardise the stage. We need to keep venues really owned by the community. We need spaces which are much more like not that long ago. This really recent, this colonial architecture in theatres. That's recent. The Globe is made of wood. It's democratic. Everyone's close enough to throw something if they don't like it. You can get 1,800 people in the Globe. It's not about tiny places. It's about building higher so that people can see that it's about making a place where you don't make a huge impact with the set. You're not trying to be impressive. You're not going to throw money at it and be spectacular. It's just the actors. So you've got the energy exchange built into the architecture. It's proper storytelling. That's not that long ago. We need those kind of spaces again. And then, if you've got the touring happening, if you've got the National Theatre happening, you've got the Royal Opera House going around the country, engaging with people, doing shows which really demand someone to throw something or laugh or make real human contact now when we need it most, right? Then you've got the schools coming in as well. You've got a platform. You've got a state-of-the-art space, essentially, even if it's simple, where people can come in, where the schools can come in and do their show, where you can. Then you start to get interaction in communities where people are. Storytelling refines its place, but at the same time, you get. We're talking about people who are born to be storytellers, and there are wonderful. People should have access to this great human wealth of creativity, and when it's great, like films. I watched a film, as I was saying last night, Anatomy of a Fall, in my front room with my kids. So it's an incredible film. It's a fantastic film, and we've got access to that. We need access to live performance again. Yeah, there's my pitch.
Well, I'm just aware of time because you said you wanted to.
Yeah, what time is it?
We've recorded for an hour. I don't have the time on me. But maybe
do you have to shoot off by a certain time?
I do. Sorry. Well, I've got a. I know. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I've got a call at 4:30. I've got another at 5. So I've got 5-10 minutes, haven't I?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just checking. Nice.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
And well, I was sort of building on that. What do you think is, because what are the obstacles to that happening in terms of community spaces being standardized to a degree? Because as you say, I mean, there's even a version of it where it doesn't have to be shows touring in some sense. It's you can have multiple shows happening, and then all you need to do is kind of, in a sense, have the directorial team just go over and go, okay, here's what we've done, and kind of help build it up in a certain place, and they go, now you just keep going, in some way as well, which kind of allows for, instead of there being a show at the National, there are the show that the National is doing, it's also started up at multiple places around, in multiple cities, and has supervised that kind of coming up and supported in that, and then gone away. So it's like a bit more spore-like, you know, in that way of being able to be multiple places at the same time.
Well, and that's why I think it works as a financial model and requires much less subsidy from the government. So that's why in a sense it's a no-brainer. But I mean, I think also what you're talking about is kind of multicasting. So there's a lot of out-of-work actors, a lot of talent that doesn't get used.
Yeah.
If you create a show, and it does happen in the West End, or you know, you and certainly the Opera House where I work, you know, often have different casts. You do the same production, but you have different casts. So you're working with two different, you know, leading ladies on the same show. They often come at separate times because of schedules and so on. But if you can triple cast a show so that the same show goes into the network and it's in Northampton and in Bognor Regis and in Scunthorpe, the same show's happening.
Yeah.
And so you may even only reach 450, 500 people because you want to keep that intimacy of the space. But then if that's happening in 3 different places, that's 1,500 people, and suddenly that show is generating money and it doesn't need subsidy, which is the problem, because that quality art is not monetized.
Yeah.
The assumption is that culture needs to be subsidized because people, you know, only a few people really want it. And again, that's a terrible assumption, isn't it? I mean, it's such a mistake to assume that only the access is this elitism. I mean, I had a chat with Nick Heitner about this very thing, and Nick Heitner, who's the former director of the National Theatre, and I don't know if you've seen Guys and Dolls at the British Theatre. It's on at the moment. It's been on a year a bit. It's an absolutely fantastic show. Incredibly innovative use. I mean, it's a bit of a sort of signature now for the shows that they do in that theatre, and with Nick Heitner directing. But he said to me, "This it's a lovely idea, Tom, but you've got to remember it's dead out there." And I just remember, you know, he's a fantastic guy and a fantastic thinker, incredibly intelligent and incredibly done masses for theatre in this country. But that killed me, that line, "It's dead out there." What does he mean? He means commercially. He means that Scunthorpe, you know, to name the place we just talked about, you get the National Theatre up Scunthorpe, you're not going to get people coming. How are you going to make money? How do you pay for the... I just think that's... If they're not coming, it's because we're not it's not available to them. They've switched off from it.
Doesn't seem accessible. Yeah.
We're going back to our thing about faith, going back to storytelling, the value of it, the human element of it, which is in all of us, like a baby cry. You know, it's communication, it's storytelling. What the values of those things. If we say it's dead, then that's incredibly sad and wrong. I mean, it's not true. So, but we do have to really ask ourselves, if it feels dead out there, why, Mr. X, head of the National Theatre?
Yeah.
You know, and he said we wanted to tour all the time. That's what we wanted to do, but we couldn't. It costs too much. Well, let's find out how to make it cost less. You know, let's not give up. It's possible. We have to rethink, and now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Wow. And it shows that you put that into what you do.
Yeah,
Theatre for all, doing it at the most basic grassroots level, you know. Yes,
with the belief that that's quality, that's not, it's not outreach. It's authentic, and that's probably a misused word, isn't it? So often, but it's this voice, it's synapses, it's community, it's belonging, it's locality. Actually, locality is a key part of storytelling. You know, where are you? Who are you? You don't exist in a non-geographical location. Or maybe you do.
Yeah. And participation, people just feeling like they have some kind of a role, some kind of a part in something beyond themselves, and it's amazing. And that's why I feel like, you know, all the stuff that you do has that built into the model, because people feel like they matter and it means something, and then they come and get involved, and then obviously then, you know, their family wants to come and go, yeah, that's amazing, and do this. And, you know, I think people are just instinctively drawn to something that is meaningful like that, where it is in a sense maybe a polyphony of meaning, you know, rather than just something that's been commercially funded and come down and put on for you, like just entertainment.
Guaranteed to entertain. Which is dangerous in terms of what we're talking about in storytelling, isn't it? Because that's not what storytelling really is. So in the end, it's going to dry up.
Yeah.
And the end, it's going to lose quality because the essential quality isn't there.
Yeah, which is what I think people feel in, you know, sort of the mainstream of cinema to a great degree. You know, and some people term it as sort of Marvelization, and some people term it, you know, maybe like as Martin Scorsese said about Marvel, you know, it's kind of like going on a roller coaster, like it's a good ride or something like that. But rush. Does it really? Yeah. You know, and that's, you know, more and more, you know, almost just trying to separate out into parts what is entertainment, and then putting them together into a thing and putting as much money in towards that as you can, you know, but something's been lost about the essential voice of the story in there as a mode of funding things, you know.
And it's exactly what we learned the past few years. This has been our
journey.
Like right now, we're, you know, you were asking us earlier how we're surviving in a sense. You know, we're no longer running this as a business.
No.
I mean, yes, some things will come up maybe every now and again. That's fine. But, you know, we had a great year, and then we had a terrible year. And then when it was terrible, it's like there's no creativity, there's no passion, there's no love for it. When, you know, we had this idea that we were supposed to build it into this bigger thing that's official and you know, maybe even has employees, and it's like, and then we'll have the platform to then create what we want, right? You know, and we thought maybe we could just work with people like you the whole time, which is great, but you're few and far in between, unfortunately. And so, that was, it just became really difficult. And I don't think we regret anything, but there was a lot of time wasted in the sense of we could have been doing this. We could have just been making whatever was calling out to us. Yeah. But we had to learn that lesson. We had to go out there and try this thing. Yeah. Absolutely. And what I've taken from it is just that, you know, as you were talking about structure earlier, right? That if the structure is there to, you know, point you in the direction, right, of where you want to go, that's amazing. But as soon, like the instant, right, that structure becomes about going, you know, well, no, what am I saying? As soon as that structure sort of comes before the creativity, in a sense, as soon as it goes, okay, you have to do this. Yes. That's when it's like, oh, hold on, you've robbed me of the opportunity to actually think what it is, you know, to feel where I'm supposed to go. And that's sort of what we were doing. And I think it happens to so many people, and, you know, it's a lesson to learn. And I think, being with you and creating these films together has, been at the while that was happening, at the heart of it was still this like, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to do this. How do we do this every day? Right?
And then we were like, build a business.
Build a business, do it every day. Yeah. Oh, wait, when you make a business, run a business, you're not doing that every day, necessarily. Okay, pretty difficult. So now it's like, okay, we maybe don't get to do it every day, but we get to do it. Yes. Good. That's the main thing.
So thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Podcast has really just been a long-winded thank you.
Basically. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast as well, because you know,
it's a pleasure. Thank you for what you do, honestly, and for you know, also for this film I'm making. You know, giving us some of the raw footage, and that's really helpful. There's a bit definitely going to want to ask to you, so.
Definitely.
Talk about
that's great. Excited to hear more about it and see it.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the summer as well at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, and how we manage that.
Yeah, definitely.
More stuff to come.
You're going to have to work it around your job. Your job.
And
Yeah.
You've got all grown up.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.